I always knew I was different from my brother Marcus. Not in the way that matters to most families, like personality or interests. No, in my family, the difference was measured in dollar signs, square footage, and the purr of expensive engines. My name is Rebecca, and this is the story of how I went from being the forgotten daughter to finding something far more valuable than anything my parents could have given me. I don't remember exactly when I realized I was different from my brother Marcus. Maybe it was the Christmas when I was 7 and he was 10. He got a new computer, expensive sports equipment, and a bicycle that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I got a stuffed animal and a book. Or maybe it was the year before that, when my parents threw Marcus a massive birthday party with a magician and a bounce house and invited his entire grade. My birthday, 3 months later, was celebrated with a store-bought cake and just our immediate family. Or maybe I always knew, from the very beginning, that in the hierarchy of the Sterling family, I was always going to be second place. Not because I was younger or less capable, but simply because I wasn't Marcus. My earliest memory is from kindergarten. I'd made a painting in art class that my teacher said was exceptional. She'd hung it up in the hallway where all the parents could see it during pickup. I was so excited to show my mother. I dragged her to the hallway, pointing at my painting with pride. Rebecca: "Look, Mommy, Mrs. Anderson said mine was the best." Mother: "That's nice, sweetheart. Oh, look, there's Marcus's teacher. I need to ask her about his advanced placement test." She walked away mid-sentence, leaving me standing there in front of my painting, alone. Even at 5 years old, I understood the message. Marcus's potential advanced placement test was more important than my artistic achievement. His future mattered more than my present. That pattern would repeat itself thousands of times over the next 20 years. Growing up in the Sterling household meant living in the shadow of perfection. Marcus was 3 years older, and from the moment he took his first steps, my parents treated him like he'd invented walking. Every report card, every soccer game, every mundane achievement was celebrated like he'd won the Nobel Prize. Me? I was just there. The spare. The backup plan nobody really needed. Don't get me wrong, we weren't poor. My father built a tech empire from the ground up, starting with a small software company in his garage and turning it into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. My mother came from old money, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. Together, they created a dynasty. And Marcus was supposed to be the prince who would carry it forward. I spent my childhood trying to understand what I was doing wrong. I brought home straight A's, but they'd barely glance at my report card before asking if I'd seen Marcus's latest business proposal. Yes, at 16, my brother was writing business proposals. I learned to play piano, practiced for hours until my fingers ached, and when I finally performed at a recital, my parents spent the entire time on their phones, texting Marcus about his college applications. I remember one recital in particular. I was 13, and I'd been preparing for months to play a challenging Chopin nocturne. It was a piece that most students my age couldn't handle, but I'd worked with my teacher every week, practicing until I could play it with my eyes closed. The night of the recital, I wore a blue dress my mother had bought me. It was the first time she'd taken me shopping in months without it being a rushed afterthought. I thought maybe she was finally paying attention, finally seeing me. I played that nocturne perfectly. Every note, every crescendo, every delicate phrase exactly as it should be. When I finished, the audience applauded enthusiastically. My teacher was beaming. Other parents came up afterward to compliment my performance. But when I looked for my parents in the audience, they were both staring at their phones. They'd watched maybe 30 seconds of my performance before getting distracted by something more important. Rebecca: "Mom, did you like the Chopin piece I played?" Mother: "Oh yes, dear, it was lovely. Now did you remember to pick up your brother's dry cleaning?" That was my role, the errand girl. The one who made sure Marcus's life ran smoothly so he could focus on being extraordinary. Throughout middle school and high school, I tried everything to get their attention. I joined the debate team and won regional competitions. I volunteered at homeless shelters and food banks. I wrote for the school newspaper and had an article published in a local magazine. I even tried deliberately failing a test once, thinking maybe if I struggled, they'd notice. They didn't. Or if they did, they never said anything. My failures were met with the same indifference as my successes. Marcus, for his part, wasn't intentionally cruel. He just lived in his own world, absorbed in his own pursuits. We'd been close as little kids, playing together in the backyard, building forts and imagining adventures. But as we got older, the distance grew. Not because we fought, but because he was always somewhere else, doing something more important, while I was home being invisible. I had friends at school who provided some relief, girls who actually cared about my life, who celebrated my birthdays and listened to my problems. But even with them, I struggled to fully open up. How could I explain that my parents, who looked perfect from the outside, barely acknowledged my existence? It sounded too dramatic, too self-pitying. One friend, Amy, figured it out anyway. Amy, your parents really favor your brother, don't they? Rebecca. What? No, it's not like that. They're just busy. Amy. Becca, I've been to your house. I've seen how they light up when Marcus walks in and barely look at you. I've watched you try to tell them about your debate win and get interrupted. It's not okay. Rebecca. It's fine. I'm fine. Amy. You're not fine, and you deserve better. She was right, but admitting it felt like betraying my family, like I was being ungrateful or overdramatic. So I pushed the feelings down and kept trying to be good enough, worthy enough, interesting enough to earn their love. When I turned 18, I had this naive hope that things might change. That college would be my chance to step out of the shadow and show everyone what I was capable of. I got accepted to 7 universities, including 2 Ivy League schools. I was so excited when I came home with the acceptance letters, I practically ran into the house. Rebecca. Dad, I got into Princeton. And Yale. Look. Father. That's nice, Rebecca. Listen, your mother and I have been talking. With Marcus starting his MBA at Harvard, and the investment we're making in his startup, we think it would be more practical if you attended State University. It's a perfectly good school and it's much more affordable. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Marcus got a blank check for his future, while I got directions to the discount option. Rebecca. But Dad, I earned these acceptances. I worked so hard. Father. And we're very proud of you. But Marcus's business venture is at a critical stage. We need to allocate our resources wisely. You understand, don't you? I wanted to scream that I didn't understand, that it wasn't fair, that I deserved the same opportunities, but I'd learned long ago that making waves in the Sterling family only meant drowning alone. So I went to State University. I worked 3 part-time jobs to cover my expenses, because asking my parents for money meant listening to lectures about fiscal responsibility while Marcus drove his 3rd luxury car. College was actually a relief. Away from my family, I could breathe. I could be Rebecca, not Marcus's little sister. I threw myself into my studies, majoring in marketing and minoring in psychology. I joined clubs, made friends, even dated a guy named Thomas for 2 years. For the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered. Thomas was sweet, a pre-law student with big dreams and an easy laugh. We met in a psychology class, bonding over terrible cafeteria coffee and late-night study sessions. Thomas. You're really good at understanding what motivates people. Ever thought about going into consumer psychology? Rebecca. Maybe. I like the idea of understanding why people make the choices they do. What drives them? Thomas. You'd be amazing at it. You notice things other people miss. It was the first time someone outside of my immediate circle had acknowledged I was good at something. Not just adequate, but actually skilled. The validation felt intoxicating. Dating Thomas taught me what it felt like to be chosen. He called when he said he would, remembered my favorite coffee order, asked about my day, and actually listened to the answer. Simple things that shouldn't have felt revolutionary, but did. Thomas. My parents want to meet you. They're coming to town next weekend for Parents' Day. Want to have dinner with us? Rebecca. Your parents want to meet me? Thomas. Of course they do. I've told them all about you. They're excited. The dinner was warm and welcoming. His mother asked about my classes, my interests, my plans for the future. His father told embarrassing stories about Thomas as a kid. They treated me like I was important, like I was someone worth knowing. Sitting at that restaurant table, I felt a pang of grief for what I'd never had with my own parents, but also hope that maybe someday I could build a different kind of family, one where people actually cared. Thomas and I eventually broke up during senior year. Nothing dramatic, just the natural drift of 2 people heading in different directions. He was going to law school on the East Coast. I was staying local for job opportunities. We parted as friends, grateful for what we'd shared. Thomas. You're going to do amazing things, Becca. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're not. Rebecca. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me. Thomas. Anyone who doesn't see you is missing out. But every holiday, every summer break, I'd go home and remember my place. Marcus would arrive in whatever new sports car my parents had bought him, regaling everyone with stories of his successful startup, his important meetings, his brilliant innovations. I'd sit there nodding and smiling, while inside I felt myself shrinking. One Thanksgiving, I'd brought home a marketing project I was particularly proud of. a campaign I'd designed for a class that my professor had called exceptional. I was excited to share it, hoping maybe this time my parents would be interested. Rebecca, I got the highest grade in my marketing class this semester. My professor said the campaign I created was one of the best student works he'd seen in years. Mother, that's nice, dear. Marcus, tell us more about the venture capital meeting you had. And just like that, I was invisible again. My achievement dismissed in a single sentence before the conversation pivoted back to Marcus. I excused myself and went to my childhood bedroom, sitting on my old bed, wondering why I kept hoping for something different. Senior year, I applied for several prestigious marketing internships. I knew I needed professional experience to stand out in the job market. When I got accepted to a competitive program at a top agency in the city, I was thrilled. Rebecca, Dad, I got the Henderson marketing internship. It's one of the most selective programs in the region. Father, congratulations. Listen, since you'll be in the city this summer, could you help Marcus with some administrative work for his company? He's overwhelmed with the expansion. Rebecca, Dad, this internship is full-time. It's a huge opportunity for my career. Father, surely you can make time for family. Marcus needs support right now. Rebecca, what about my needs? What about my career? Father, don't be selfish, Rebecca. We've given you an education. The least you can do is help your brother when he needs it. I took the internship and didn't help Marcus with his administrative work. It was one of the first times I'd ever said no to my family, and it felt both terrifying and liberating. My parents were disappointed, but I was learning that their disappointment was a constant, regardless of what I did. The internship was transformative. I worked under a senior account manager named Diane Chen, who took me under her wing. Diane, you have good instincts, Rebecca, but you need to trust them more. Stop second-guessing yourself. Rebecca, I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right. Diane, there's a difference between being thorough and being afraid. You're afraid of making mistakes, of taking up space, of being wrong. That fear is holding you back from being great. Her words struck deep. She was right. I was so terrified of failing, of proving my parents right that I wasn't good enough, that I played it safe constantly. Never took risks, never trusted my own judgment. Diane, want to know what I see when I look at your work? Talent that's been beaten down, creativity that's been dimmed, confidence that's been shattered. Someone told you that you weren't good enough, and you believed them. But Rebecca, they were wrong. I cried in her office that day. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when someone sees the truth you've been trying to hide even from yourself. The internship turned into a job offer right after graduation. Henderson Marketing wanted to bring me on full-time. It wasn't a high-level position, and the salary was modest, but it was mine. Earned by my own merit, not given because of family connections or favoritism. But every success at work was shadowed by silence from home. My parents never called to ask how I was doing. Never asked about my job or my life. The only time I heard from them was when they needed something. After graduation, I moved into a tiny studio apartment on the east side of town. It was 500 square feet of freedom, with a kitchen so small I could touch both walls with my arms spread, and a bathroom that barely fit a shower. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture I bought secondhand, every dish I owned came from thrift stores, and I was proud of every single item. My job at Henderson Marketing wasn't glamorous. I was the most junior member of a team of 12, which meant I got all the grunt work. Coffee runs, data entry, formatting presentations that other people would present. But I showed up early, stayed late, and absorbed everything I could learn. My boss, a woman named Veronica Hayes, was tough but fair. She had this way of seeing through corporate nonsense that I admired. Veronica. Rebecca, you've been here 6 months now. Why are you still acting like an intern? Rebecca. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right. Veronica. You're doing fine. Better than fine, actually. But you need to stop apologizing for taking up space. You earned your position here. Act like it. Her words stuck with me, but changing a lifetime of making myself small wasn't easy. At home, Jennifer would listen to me process my days over cheap wine and takeout. Jennifer, you know what your problem is? You're still trying to earn the right to exist. Like you have to justify your presence everywhere you go. Rebecca, that's not true. Jennifer, really? Today you apologized to the vending machine when it gave you the wrong snack. Rebecca, I did not. Jennifer, you literally said sorry to an inanimate object, Becca. She was right, of course. I apologized constantly. Sorry for speaking up in meetings. Sorry for having ideas. Sorry for existing in spaces where I felt I didn't belong. It was exhausting. Work became my proving ground. I started volunteering for projects nobody else wanted, the difficult clients and impossible deadlines. I figured if I couldn't get recognition at home, maybe I could earn it professionally. One project changed everything. We had a client, a small nonprofit called Safe Harbor, that helped homeless youth. They had zero budget and desperately needed a campaign to raise awareness for their annual fundraiser. Everyone at the agency passed on it because the pay was terrible and the timeline was brutal. I took it. For 3 weeks, I lived and breathed that campaign. I visited their shelter, met the kids they were helping, listened to their stories. There was this one girl, Maya, 16 years old, who'd been living on the streets for 8 months after her parents kicked her out. She was smart, articulate, and terrified of being invisible. Maya, people look right through us, you know? Like we're ghosts. They don't want to see us because then they'd have to care. Her words hit me like a freight train. I knew exactly what it felt like to be invisible to people who should see you. I poured everything into that campaign. Shot videos on my own camera, wrote copy that came from my gut, designed graphics late into the night. The campaign wasn't just about raising money. It was about making people see these kids as human beings with stories and potential. When Safe Harbor's fundraiser happened, they exceeded their goal by 300%. The local news covered it. The mayor attended. And those kids like Maya, got the resources they needed. Veronica called me into her office the Monday after. Veronica, the Safe Harbor campaign. That was all you? Rebecca. Yes. I know the budget was small and it wasn't our typical client, but I thought it was important. Veronica. Important? Rebecca, you just landed us 3 new nonprofit clients because of the buzz you created. And more than that, you reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. To actually help people, not just sell products. She promoted me on the spot. Not a huge jump, but enough that I got my own projects and a modest raise. More importantly, I'd found my voice, my niche. I was good at telling stories that mattered, at making invisible people visible. But every success at work was shadowed by silence from home. My parents never called to ask how I was doing, never asked about my job or my life. The only time I heard from them was when they needed something. Mother, Rebecca, Marcus is hosting a dinner party for some investors next week. We need you to help coordinate the catering. Rebecca, Mom, I have a work presentation that night. Mother, surely you can reschedule. This is important for your brother's business. Rebecca, my presentation is important too. Mother, don't be difficult, Rebecca. Family comes first. But I wasn't family. Not really. I was staff, the unpaid assistant to the golden child. I stopped going to family dinners, stopped answering calls unless it was an emergency. My absence was never questioned or commented on, which somehow hurt more than anything else. They didn't miss me because they'd never really noticed I was there. Meanwhile, Marcus's success grew exponentially. His startup was featured in business magazines. He was invited to speak at conferences. My parents threw lavish parties to celebrate his achievements. I'd see the photos on social media, my mother's arm around Marcus, my father beaming with pride, and I'd feel that familiar ache in my chest. Jennifer caught me scrolling through photos one night. Jennifer, why do you torture yourself like this? Rebecca, I don't know. Maybe I keep hoping it'll hurt less. Jennifer, does it? Rebecca, no. Jennifer, then stop looking. Becca, they don't deserve your pain. They don't deserve your thoughts or your energy. You need to let them go. Rebecca, they're my family. Jennifer, family is supposed to love you, support you, see you. They do none of those things. You're grieving people who are still alive, mourning a relationship that never existed. At some point, you have to accept reality and move on. Her words were harsh but true. I was stuck in this loop of hope and disappointment, always thinking maybe this time would be different. Maybe this achievement would be enough to make them notice me. Around this time, I started dating someone. His name was Nathan, and he was a graphic designer at a firm 3 blocks from my office. We met at a coffee shop when he accidentally grabbed my latte and I grabbed his Americano. Nathan, I think we have each other's drinks. Rebecca, oh, yes, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Nathan, stop apologizing. The barista mixed them up, not you. I'm Nathan. Rebecca, Nathan. Want to sit and drink these correctly identified beverages together, Rebecca? He had an easy smile and kind eyes, and for the first time in months, I felt seen. We started dating slowly, coffee dates turning into dinners, dinners into weekend adventures. Nathan was everything my family wasn't. He listened when I talked, remembered small details about my life, celebrated my wins, even the tiny ones. Nathan, you got assigned the Riverside account? Becca, that's huge. Rebecca, it's not that big a deal. Nathan, yes, it is. You've been working toward this for months. Stop downplaying your achievements. Being with Nathan felt like learning a new language, the language of healthy relationships where people actually cared about each other's lives. But it also highlighted how dysfunctional my family was. 6 months into our relationship, Nathan asked to meet my parents. Nathan, I've told my family all about you. They're excited to meet you. When can I meet yours? I froze. How could I explain that my parents barely acknowledged my existence? That introducing him to them would mean watching him see how little I mattered in my own family? Rebecca, my family is complicated. Nathan, complicated how? Rebecca, they're not really interested in my life. We're not close. Nathan, but they're your parents. Don't they want to know who you're dating? I tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled and inadequate. Nathan listened, his expression shifting from confusion to concern to anger. Nathan, wait, they gave your brother $200 million and you got nothing? Rebecca, I got a hug. Nathan, a hug. They gave you a hug while your brother got handed a fortune. Becca, that's not complicated. That's cruel. Hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way I'd been avoiding. My parents weren't just distant or busy. They were actively choosing to treat me as less than, as unworthy. And I'd been accepting it because I didn't know how to do anything else. The real breaking point came 3 months after I graduated, almost 2 years into my job at Henderson Marketing. I'd been promoted twice, had built a reputation for excellent work, and was finally feeling stable and successful. I was supporting myself, paying my own rent, building a relationship with a man who actually valued me. I was independent, and that felt like victory. Then I got the call from my mother. Mother, Rebecca, darling, we need you to come to the house this weekend. Your father and I have some exciting news to share. I should have known. I should have felt the warning signs. But some stupid, hopeful part of me thought maybe, just maybe, they were finally going to acknowledge me, celebrate something I'd done, tell me they were proud. I showed up Saturday afternoon. The house looked like they were hosting a party. Caterers bustled around, setting up tables in the backyard. A photographer was adjusting lighting in the living room. And there, in the driveway, sat a gleaming black Tesla with a massive red bow on top. Marcus was already there, looking confused but pleased. My parents were practically vibrating with excitement. Father, there they are, both our children, together. Come, come, we have an announcement to make. We gathered in the living room, where the photographer started snapping pictures. My mother couldn't stop smiling. Mother, Marcus, your father and I are so incredibly proud of the man you've become. Your business acumen, your drive, your vision, it's everything we hoped for and more. Father, son, we've watched you build your company from the ground up, and now it's time for us to help you take it to the next level. We're investing $200 million in your expansion. I felt dizzy. $200 million. The number was so large it didn't even feel real, but they weren't done. Mother, and we know you've been living in that cramped apartment, working such long hours. So we bought you a house, 8,000 square feet in Riverside Estates, fully furnished. It's our gift to you. Marcus looked stunned. Even he seemed overwhelmed by the magnitude. Father, and of course, every successful executive needs reliable transportation. The Tesla outside is yours, son, fully loaded, top of the line. The photographer captured every moment. My parents hugging Marcus. Marcus looking at the keys in his hand. The three of them standing in front of the Tesla. A perfect family portrait, with one person missing. I stood there in the corner, invisible, forgotten. Again. Finally, my mother seemed to remember I existed. Mother, Rebecca, come here, darling. We have something for you, too. Hope flickered in my chest. Something for me, too. Maybe not $200 million, but something. Acknowledgement, recognition, proof that I mattered. My mother walked over, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She opened her arms and hugged me. That was it. A hug. While my brother got $200 million, a mansion, and a car that cost more than most people's houses, I got a 30-second embrace and a pat on the back. Mother, we're so glad you could be here to celebrate Marcus's success, sweetheart. Family is so important. Something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Every year of being overlooked, every achievement ignored, every time I came second to my golden child brother, it all crashed down on me in that moment. I don't remember making the decision to leave. I don't remember grabbing my purse or walking to my car, but suddenly I was sitting in my 10-year-old Honda in my parents' driveway, watching through tears as the photographer continued documenting Marcus's triumph. I drove home in a daze. My roommate Jennifer took one look at my face and pulled me inside. Jennifer. What happened? Rebecca. $200 million, a mansion, a Tesla. That's what my parents gave Marcus today. You want to know what I got? A hug. A fucking hug, Jen. I broke down then. Really broke down. Years of suppressed hurt and rejection poured out. Jennifer held me while I sobbed, not saying anything, just being there. When I finally exhausted myself, she handed me a glass of wine and sat across from me. Jennifer. Rebecca, I've known you for 4 years now, and in that time, I've watched you twist yourself into knots trying to earn your parents' love. But honey, some people are never going to see your worth, no matter what you do. The question is, when are you going to stop giving them the power to define your value? Her words hit me hard. She was right. I'd spent 25 years chasing approval that was never going to come. I dimmed my own light, made myself smaller, accepted scraps, all for people who couldn't even be bothered to notice me unless I was serving their golden child. That night, I made a decision. I was done. Done begging for crumbs of affection. Done measuring my worth by their indifference. Done being the forgotten daughter. I blocked my parents' number. Blocked Marcus, too, for good measure. If they noticed, they'd know how to find me. But I wasn't holding my breath. The next few weeks were strange. I felt lighter, but also terrified. I'd never completely cut ties with my family before. There was a grief in it, mourning the relationship I'd always wanted but never had. But there was also freedom. I threw myself into work with a new intensity. Not to prove anything to my parents, but to prove something to myself. That I was capable. That I was enough. That I didn't need their validation to succeed. My boss, Caroline, noticed the change. Caroline. Rebecca. The campaign you designed for the Morrison account is exceptional. Creative, data-driven, exactly what they needed. I'm putting you up for the senior position that's opening next quarter. Rebecca. Really? Thank you, Caroline. That means a lot. Caroline. You've been holding back for some reason, but these last few weeks, it's like you've finally decided to show us what you can actually do. Keep this up and you're going places. I was starting to believe it might be true. For the first time in my life, I was building something that was entirely mine. Not in Marcus's shadow, not with my parents' conditional support, but on my own merit. Then, 6 weeks after I cut contact with my family, something unexpected happened. I was working late at the office, finishing a presentation for a potential new client. Everyone else had gone home, and I was enjoying the quiet concentration when the receptionist's phone rang. We didn't usually get calls this late, so I answered it. Rebecca. Sterling Marketing. This is Rebecca speaking. Unknown. Man. Rebecca Sterling? Daughter of Richard and Patricia Sterling? Rebecca. Who's asking? Unknown. Man. My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney, and I need to speak with you about a matter concerning your grandmother, Eleanor Sterling. My heart skipped. Grandmother Eleanor, my father's mother. I hadn't seen her in years, not since I was a child. She'd lived in New York, kept to herself mostly. I barely remembered her. Rebecca. What about her? David Chen. I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Could you come to my office tomorrow? I'm in the city, on Fifth Avenue. Something in his tone told me this was serious. I agreed to meet him the next day at 10 in the morning. I couldn't sleep that night. What could an attorney want with me regarding a grandmother I barely knew? Had something happened to her? Was I in some kind of trouble? David Chen's office was in one of those old buildings with marble lobbies and brass elevators. Everything about it screamed established, serious, important. The receptionist led me to a corner office with a view of the city. David Chen was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s with sharp eyes and a kind smile. He stood when I entered. David Chen. Miss Sterling, thank you for coming. Please, sit down. Rebecca. What's this about, Mr. Chen? David Chen. I'll get straight to the point. Your grandmother, Eleanor Sterling, passed away 3 weeks ago. The news hit me harder than I expected. I barely knew her, but she was still family. Still a connection to something. Rebecca. I didn't know. My parents didn't tell me. David Chen. I'm not surprised. Your grandmother's relationship with your father was complicated. They hadn't spoken in almost 15 years. Rebecca. Why not? David Chen. Because your grandmother disapproved of how your father was running his life. Specifically, how he was raising his children. I sat up straighter. That was unexpected. David Chen. Eleanor Sterling was a remarkable woman. She built her own fortune in real estate when women weren't supposed to be in business. She was tough, brilliant, and she had very strong opinions about family, about favoritism, about treating children equally. He opened a folder on his desk and pulled out a document. David Chen, when your grandmother learned how your father was treating you versus your brother, she was furious. She reached out to you several times over the years. Did you know that? Rebecca. No. I never got any messages from her. David Chen. Your parents intercepted them. They didn't want Eleanor's influence in their children's lives because she openly criticized their parenting choices. Anger flared in my chest. Of course they did. Of course they kept me from someone who might have actually cared about me. David Chen. Eleanor kept track of you anyway. She knew about your academic achievements, your college struggles, your job. She knew about the state university situation, the internship you took, the job at Henderson Marketing. She was proud of you, Rebecca. Very proud. And she wanted to make sure you knew that. My throat tightened. A grandmother I barely remembered had been watching me, caring about me, proud of me, while my own parents couldn't be bothered to notice I existed. David Chen. When Eleanor learned about the incident with your brother's gifts, the $200 million and the mansion and the Tesla versus the hug you received, she was devastated. She called me that very night and revised her will. He slid the document across the desk to me. David Chen, your grandmother left you her entire estate. I stared at the paper, not comprehending the numbers at first. Then they slowly came into focus. $35 million in liquid assets, a portfolio of real estate properties worth another $45 million, shares in various companies totaling approximately $30 million more, and a penthouse apartment in Manhattan that was worth at least $20 million on its own. My grandmother had left me a fortune worth over $130 million. Rebecca, this can't be real. There must be some mistake. David Chen, there's no mistake. Eleanor was very clear in her will. Everything goes to you, with one stipulation. You're to receive it all only if you promise to live your life on your own terms, not trying to earn anyone else's approval. She was quite specific about that. I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was hearing. David Chen, your father knows about this, by the way. He contested the will naturally. Claimed you'd manipulated his mother, that you were undeserving, that you'd somehow coerced a woman you barely knew into leaving you everything. Every argument his lawyers could think of. But the will was ironclad. I wrote it myself, and I made sure it was bulletproof. The court upheld it last week. The money is yours, Rebecca. All of it. Rebecca, my father tried to take this away from me. David Chen. He hired 3 different law firms to challenge it, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees. When that didn't work, he tried to have your grandmother declared mentally incompetent at the time she revised her will. That also failed. The medical records were clear. Eleanor was sharp as a tack until the day she died. Rebecca, why would he do that? He already gave Marcus everything. Why does he need to take this from me too? David Chen, I don't think it's about the money, Rebecca. I think it's about control, about maintaining the family hierarchy he's created. Your grandmother's will was a direct repudiation of how he's treated you. It was her way of saying he was wrong, and that kills him more than losing the money. I sat there, letting it all sink in. My grandmother, a woman I barely remembered, had seen me, had known what I was going through, and had left me not just money, but a message. You are worthy. You deserve this. Live for yourself. David Chen, there's something else you should know. Your grandmother left letters for you. They're in a safety deposit box at First National Bank. This is the key and authorization. He handed me a small key and another document. David Chen, she wanted you to read them when you were ready. No rush. They've waited this long, they can wait a bit longer. Rebecca, can I ask you something? Did you know my grandmother well? David Chen, I was her attorney for 20 years. Yes, I knew her well. She was one of the most principled, caring people I've ever met. She built her fortune ethically, treated her employees fairly, and used her wealth to help causes she believed in. When she talked about you, her face would light up. She'd tell me stories about articles you'd written, awards you'd won, challenges you'd overcome. She was so proud of you, Rebecca. She just wished she could have told you that herself. My grandmother, a woman I barely remembered, had seen me, had known what I was going through, and had left me not just money, but a message. You are worthy. You deserve this. Live for yourself. I left David Chen's office in a daze. $130 million, more than my parents had given Marcus. More than I'd ever dreamed of having. But what struck me most wasn't the amount. It was that someone in my family had actually cared about me, had thought I was valuable enough to leave their life's work to. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at the paperwork David had given me. Property deeds, investment portfolios, bank account numbers with more zeros than I could process. My hands were shaking. I called Jennifer from my car. Jennifer, hey, how'd the meeting with the lawyer go? Rebecca, Jen, you're not going to believe this. My grandmother left me everything, over $130 million. Jennifer, what? Are you serious? Rebecca, dead serious. She knew how my parents treated me. She kept track of me for years, and she left me her entire fortune. Jennifer, oh my God, Rebecca, that's insane. What are you going to do? Rebecca, I have no idea. But that wasn't entirely true. Even as I said it, thoughts were forming. Plans. Dreams I'd never let myself fully imagine because they seemed too impossible. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tiny apartment staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything this money represented. It wasn't just financial security. It was validation. Proof that I was worth something to someone, that I deserved to be seen and valued and remembered. But it was also terrifying. What if I squandered it? What if I made stupid decisions and lost everything? What if I proved my parents right, that I wasn't capable of handling real success? I called Nathan at 2 a.m. Nathan, Becca? What's wrong? Rebecca, I inherited over $100 million from my grandmother today. Nathan, you what? Rebecca, she left me everything, her whole estate. Nathan, I don't know what to do. What if I mess this up? Nathan, hey, breathe. First of all, that's incredible. Second, you're not going to mess it up. You're one of the most capable, thoughtful people I know. But Becca, this is huge. You need help. Professional help. Financial advisors, lawyers, people who know how to handle this kind of wealth. He was right, of course. The next morning, I started making calls. David Chen recommended several financial advisors, and I spent the following weeks in meetings, learning about trusts and investments and tax implications. It was overwhelming and exhausting, but also empowering. One advisor, a woman named Patricia Lawson, became my main guide. Patricia, Rebecca, the most important thing right now is to not make any major decisions quickly. Take your time, learn about your assets, understand what you have before you decide what to do with it. Rebecca, but I already know what I want to do. I want to start my own business. Help small companies and nonprofits that can't afford big agencies. Patricia, that's a wonderful goal, but let's make sure you do it right. Let's set up a business plan, project costs, create a sustainable model. You have the resources to build something incredible, but you also have the resources to lose everything if you're not careful. She was protecting me from my own enthusiasm, and I appreciated it. Over the next month, we built a comprehensive financial plan. We set up trusts that would preserve the principal wealth while generating income. We diversified investments to minimize risk. We created a business fund specifically for my company with clear budgets and milestones. The process was educational in ways I'd never experienced. I learned about real estate markets and stock portfolios and charitable foundations. I learned that wealth wasn't just about having money, but about managing it responsibly and using it purposefully. Meanwhile, word had gotten out about the inheritance. My phone started ringing constantly. My mother called 17 times in 3 days. My father left voicemails demanding I call him back. Marcus sent texts asking if we could talk. Even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to catch up. I ignored most of them. I wasn't ready for those conversations. I needed space to process everything and figure out my next steps without their interference or judgment. But I did meet with Nathan's family finally. His parents, Robert and Linda, welcomed me with genuine warmth. Linda, Nathan's told us so much about you, Rebecca. We're so glad to finally meet you. Robert, he says you're starting your own business. That's impressive. Rebecca, thank you. I'm still figuring it all out, but I'm excited about it. Sitting at their dinner table, watching Nathan's parents ask me real questions about my life and actually listen to the answers, I realized what I'd been missing my entire life. This is what family was supposed to feel like. Interest, support, genuine care about who I was and what I was doing. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table, and I felt tears prick my eyes. Good tears for once. Nathan, you okay? Rebecca, yeah, I'm really okay. The first thing I did was quit my job, not out of spite or laziness, but because I wanted to do something meaningful with this opportunity. Veronica understood. Veronica, you're making the right call, Rebecca. You've outgrown this place anyway. Go build something amazing. Rebecca, thank you for everything you taught me. About finding my voice and not apologizing for existing. Veronica, you taught yourself that, kid. I just pointed you in the right direction. I spent the next 3 months in intensive planning mode. I worked with business consultants to develop a solid model for Sterling Solutions. I met with nonprofits and small business owners to understand their needs and pain points. I researched competitors and identified gaps in the market. I wasn't just throwing money at a dream. I was building a sustainable, impactful business. I also bought a house. Not a mansion, just a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman in a neighborhood I loved, with a garden and a reading nook and space to breathe. It had character, with original hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves and windows that let in perfect morning light. It was mine, chosen by me, perfect in its imperfection. Nathan helped me move in, and we spent a weekend unpacking boxes and hanging pictures. Nathan, this place suits you. It's warm and real and beautiful. Rebecca, it's the first time I've ever felt at home anywhere. Nathan, what about your apartment with Jennifer? Rebecca, that felt like a hideout, a safe space. But this feels like a home. Like I belong here because I chose it. Not because I was hiding or surviving, but because I'm actually living. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe, or possibility. Sterling Solutions officially launched 6 months after I inherited my grandmother's estate. I rented office space in a renovated building downtown, hired 3 talented people who shared my vision, and took on our first 5 clients. All nonprofits, all making real differences in their communities. The work was challenging and rewarding in ways my corporate job had never been. Every campaign we created had purpose. Every success meant actual people being helped. A food bank that doubled its donations. A literacy program that expanded to 3 new schools. A women's shelter that got funding to add 20 more beds. Our first major client was a youth mentorship organization called Bright Futures. They'd been struggling to attract volunteers and funding, despite doing incredible work with at-risk teenagers. Their director, a woman named Sandra Martinez, came to our first meeting exhausted and desperate. Sandra, we've tried everything. Social media posts, flyers, emails to local businesses. Nothing's working. We're about to lose our lease because we can't make rent. And if we close, 60 kids lose their only safe space. Rebecca, tell me about the kids. What makes Bright Futures special? Sandra, these are teenagers who've been written off by everyone else. Foster kids, kids from abusive homes, kids who've been expelled from school. We give them a place to go after school where adults actually listen to them. We help with homework, teach life skills, just be present. Last year, 15 of our kids graduated high school. Without us, most of them would have dropped out. I spent 3 days at their center, talking to the kids, the volunteers, watching how the program worked. One boy, Carlos, 15 years old, told me his story. Carlos, I used to think I was stupid because that's what everyone told me. Teachers, my foster parents, other kids. Then I came here and Ms. Sandra, she didn't treat me like I was broken. She treated me like I was smart, like I could do things. Now I'm getting B's and C's instead of failing everything. I'm going to graduate, maybe even go to community college. Because someone finally believed I could. That's when I knew how to frame the campaign. Not about the organization's needs, but about the kids' transformations. We created video testimonials, before and after stories, showing the real impact of mentorship. We reached out to local media, pitched human interest stories. We designed a fundraising gala that wasn't stuffy or formal, but celebrated the kids themselves. The campaign exceeded every expectation. Bright Futures raised enough money to secure their lease for 3 years. Volunteer applications tripled. Local businesses started donating supplies and equipment. And Sandra cried when she called to thank me. Sandra, you saved us, Rebecca. You saved these kids. Rebecca, you're the ones doing the saving. I just helped people see what you were already accomplishing. But running a business was harder than I expected. There were permits and regulations and insurance policies and payroll taxes. There were difficult clients and tight deadlines and campaigns that didn't work as well as we'd hoped. I made mistakes, learned from them, made different mistakes. One client, an environmental nonprofit, wanted us to create a campaign that blamed and shamed people for not recycling. I pushed back, knowing shame rarely motivates lasting change. We argued for weeks before they finally left and hired another agency. It stung, losing a client, but I was learning that standing by my principles mattered more than keeping everyone happy. My team became like family. There was James, a copywriter with a gift for storytelling who could make anyone cry with his words. Priya, a designer who could take the most boring data and turn it into beautiful, compelling graphics. And Andrew, an account manager who could charm anyone into anything while genuinely caring about every client's success. We worked long hours those first few months, fueled by pizza and coffee and the belief that we were building something meaningful. We celebrated small victories, like landing a new client or seeing one of our campaigns go viral. We supported each other through setbacks, like campaigns that flopped or clients who didn't appreciate our work. James: Boss, we have a problem with the Harbor Project campaign. Rebecca: What's wrong? James: The client wants to change the entire message 3 days before launch. Rebecca: 3 days? That's impossible. Priya: We could pull an all-nighter. Make it work. Rebecca: No, we're not doing that. We have boundaries for a reason. James: Call the client. Explain that major changes require time and additional budget. If they want to proceed with the launch date, we stay with the current campaign. If they want to change it, we push the date back 2 weeks. Andrew: They're not going to like that. Rebecca: Probably not, but we're not going to compromise quality or burn ourselves out because they can't make decisions. We do good work, and good work requires proper process. The client was angry at first, but ultimately respected the boundary. They pushed the date back, we implemented the changes properly, and the campaign was successful. That taught me an important lesson about the difference between being accommodating and being a doormat. Setting boundaries was another lesson I was learning. For so long, I'd said yes to everything, terrified that saying no would make me dispensable. But running my own company meant protecting my team and our standards. It meant understanding that we couldn't be everything to everyone, and that was okay. Sterling Solutions grew steadily. By the end of the first year, we'd helped 32 organizations. By the end of the second, we had a waiting list. We hired more people, moved to a bigger office, and I started feeling something I'd never felt before. Pride. Real, genuine pride in what I'd built. But not everything was smooth. 3 months after I cut contact with my family, I got a call from my mother. I'd unblocked their numbers, not because I wanted them back in my life, but because hiding felt like giving them power they didn't deserve. The first thing I did was quit my job, not out of spite or laziness, but because I wanted to do something meaningful with this opportunity. I spent weeks meeting with financial advisors, learning about investments and trust funds and charitable foundations. I was terrified of squandering this gift, but also determined to use it wisely. Then I started my own company, not to compete with my father or prove something to my family, but because I'd always had ideas I wanted to pursue. A marketing consultancy that specifically helped small businesses and nonprofits, companies that couldn't afford big agencies but needed professional help. I called it Sterling Solutions, a little nod to my grandmother and a reclamation of the family name for something good. I also bought a house. Not a mansion, just a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman in a neighborhood I loved, with a garden and a reading nook and space to breathe. It was mine, chosen by me, perfect in its imperfection. 3 months after David Chen's revelations, I got a call from my mother. I'd unblocked their numbers, not because I wanted them back in my life, but because hiding felt like giving them power they didn't deserve. Mother: Rebecca, we need to talk about this will situation. Your father is very upset. You've stolen money that should have gone to Marcus. Rebecca: I didn't steal anything, Mom. Grandmother Eleanor left me her estate because she chose to. Because she saw value in me that you and Dad never could. Mother: Don't be dramatic. You know Marcus needs that capital for his business expansion. Surely you can see how unfair this is to him. I almost laughed. The irony was breathtaking. Rebecca: Unfair? You gave Marcus $200 million, a mansion, and a Tesla. I got a hug. And now you want to talk to me about fairness? Mother: That was different. Marcus is building something important. Rebecca: And I'm not? Mom: I'm done. I'm done trying to make you see me. I'm done shrinking myself to make Marcus look bigger. I'm done being the daughter you couldn't be bothered to love. Mother: Rebecca, you're being unreasonable. Rebecca: No, I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm being honest. You and Dad had 25 years to be parents to me. You chose not to. That's on you. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life waiting for you to care. I'm going to build a life I'm proud of, with people who actually value me. And if that doesn't include you, that's your loss, not mine. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt strong, clear, free. Over the next year, Sterling Solutions grew beyond my wildest expectations. Turns out, when you're genuinely trying to help people succeed rather than just make money, they notice. We took on nonprofits fighting homelessness, small businesses started by immigrants and single mothers, artists trying to share their work with the world. Every client was someone who deserved a chance but couldn't afford traditional agencies. I reinvested profits into the company, hired a small team of talented people who shared my vision, and created a work environment I'd always wanted, where people were valued for their contributions, not their connections. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Marcus called me. Marcus. Rebecca. It's Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to talk to you. Rebecca. What do you want, Marcus? Marcus. To apologize. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. About how Mom and Dad treated you. About how I just went along with it, accepted everything they gave me without questioning whether it was fair. I was suspicious. Years of disappointment had taught me to guard my heart. Rebecca. Why now? Why do you suddenly care? Marcus. Because I saw what you're doing with grandmother's money. Sterling Solutions, the businesses you're helping, the foundation you started for college scholarships. You're actually making a difference, Rebecca. And it made me realize that I've just been playing the role they wrote for me, never questioning whether it was right. Marcus. The truth is, all the money they gave me, it came with strings, expectations, control. They want me to run the business their way, marry the right person, have the right connections. It's suffocating. And watching you walk away and build something on your own terms, it made me see that I've been in a cage too, just a gilded one. Rebecca. What are you saying, Marcus? Marcus. I'm saying I was a shitty brother. I let them treat you like you didn't matter, and I never stood up for you. I took everything they gave me and never thought about what they weren't giving you. I'm sorry, Rebecca. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to stay angry, to keep him at arm's length, but another part, the part that remembered playing together as kids before everything got complicated, wanted to believe him. Rebecca. I appreciate you saying that, Marcus. I do, but I need time. I need to figure out who I am without this family's drama first. Marcus. I understand, but Rebecca, I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago. We hung up, and I sat with the complicated feelings his call stirred up. Forgiveness isn't instant. Trust isn't automatic. But maybe someday we could find a way to be siblings without the weight of our parents' favoritism crushing us. 2 years after inheriting my grandmother's estate, I received a package at my office. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age, and a photograph. The photo showed a young woman standing in front of a construction site, wearing a hard hat and a determined smile. On the back, someone had written, Eleanor Sterling, First Building, 1973. The letter was addressed to me, written in elegant cursive. My dearest Rebecca, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've inherited what I spent my lifetime building. I wish I could have known you better, watched you grow up, been there for you. But your parents made that impossible, and I respected their wishes even though I disagreed with their choices. I've watched you from afar, proud of every achievement, angry at every slight. You remind me of myself at your age. Determined, capable, overlooked because of other people's prejudices and priorities. I built my fortune because no one would give me a chance, so I created my own opportunities. I see that same fire in you. Money is just a tool, Rebecca. What matters is what you build with it. Not just buildings or businesses, but a life that means something. A life lived on your terms, not anyone else's. You don't need your parents' approval. You never did. You are enough, exactly as you are. Be bold, be kind, be unapologetically yourself, and know that somewhere, your grandmother is cheering you on. With love, Eleanor Sterling. I cried reading it, not from sadness but from recognition. My grandmother had seen me, really seen me, and had reached across death to tell me what I needed to hear. I framed the letter and hung it in my office, a reminder of where I came from and where I was going. Sterling Solutions continued to grow. We expanded to 3 cities, hired 20 employees, and helped over 500 small businesses and nonprofits launch successful campaigns. But the growth wasn't just about numbers. It was about impact. It was about the single mother who started a bakery and could now support her kids. The veterans support group that finally got the funding they needed. The arts program that brought music back to underfunded schools. Each success story reminded me why I was doing this. It wasn't about competing with my parents or proving anything to them. It was about using my resources and skills to make invisible people visible, just like Maya had talked about years ago at the shelter. I established the Eleanor Sterling Scholarship Fund, which gave full-ride scholarships to students from families that didn't believe in them. Every year, we awarded 10 scholarships to young people who reminded me of myself, kids who were overlooked but brilliant, underestimated but determined. The first year of the scholarship, we received over 3,000 applications. Reading them broke my heart and filled it at the same time. So many young people fighting to be seen, to be valued, to have a chance. One application stood out. A girl named Jasmine, 17 years old, from a small town in Ohio. Her essay was raw and honest. She wrote about being the middle child in a family where her older brother was the star athlete and her younger sister was the artistic prodigy. About being told she was fine, adequate, unremarkable. About working 2 jobs to save for college because her parents had spent all their education money on her siblings' pursuits. About feeling invisible in her own family. I called her personally to tell her she'd been selected. Jasmine, is this real? I actually won. Rebecca, you didn't win anything, Jasmine. You earned this. Your grades, your determination, your strength. You deserve this opportunity. Jasmine, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. Rebecca, can I tell you something? I know exactly what it feels like to be overlooked by your own family, to feel like you're not enough. But Jasmine, you are enough. You always have been. They just couldn't see it. I heard her crying on the other end of the line, and I was crying too. Because in helping her, I was also healing something in myself. Over the years, I stayed connected with many of the scholarship recipients. I mentored them, celebrated their achievements, supported them through challenges. Watching them thrive, seeing them discover their worth and potential, was more rewarding than any business success. I dated, traveled, made friends who chose me for who I was, not what I could give them. I learned to salsa dance, took a pottery class, volunteered at an animal shelter. I built a life that was rich in ways that had nothing to do with bank accounts. Meanwhile, my relationship with Nathan deepened. 3 years after we started dating, he proposed. Not with some elaborate public display, but on a quiet Sunday morning in our kitchen, both of us still in pajamas drinking coffee. Nathan, I want to spend my life with you, Becca. I want to build a family with you, a real family, where everyone is seen and valued and loved. Will you marry me? Rebecca, yes, absolutely yes. We got married in our backyard, surrounded by the people who actually mattered. Jennifer was my maid of honor. My team from Sterling Solutions was there. Nathan's family welcomed me as one of their own. The scholarship recipients I'd mentored over the years came, bringing handmade cards and tearful hugs. My parents weren't invited. Neither was Marcus at that time, though he'd sent a card congratulating me. It was the happiest day of my life, not because it was perfect, but because it was authentic. Every person there chose to be there, chose to celebrate us, chose to see us. During my vows, I looked at Nathan and said something I'd never been able to say before. Rebecca, you taught me that love isn't something you have to earn or beg for. It's something freely given to people who deserve it. And for the first time in my life, I feel deserving. Thank you for seeing me. There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. Life wasn't perfect. Nathan and I had disagreements and bad days like any couple. Sterling Solutions faced challenges and setbacks. Clients who were difficult to please. Campaigns that didn't perform as well as we'd hoped. Team members who moved on to other opportunities. I still had moments where my parents' rejection hurt, where I wondered what I could have done differently to earn their love. But I'd learned something crucial. My worth wasn't determined by their inability to see it. Their blindness was their problem, not my deficiency. My parents never apologized. They never acknowledged their treatment of me or admitted any wrongdoing. For a long time, that hurt. But eventually, I realized I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their recognition. I had something better. I had my own sense of worth, built by my own hands, validated by my own accomplishments. Marcus and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. It wasn't perfect or easy, but we found a way to be siblings again. He eventually left our father's company and started something smaller, more meaningful to him. A consulting firm that helped small businesses develop sustainable practices. It was nothing like the empire our father had built, but it was his, and he was proud of it. We got coffee every few weeks, comparing notes on being sterling children who chose different paths. Marcus, Dad's furious that I'm walking away from the business. Says I'm throwing away everything he built. Rebecca, sounds familiar. How does it feel? Marcus, terrifying, liberating, like I can finally breathe. Is that how you felt when you cut them off? Rebecca, exactly like that. Marcus, I'm sorry, Rebecca. I know I've said it before, but I need you to really hear it. I'm sorry for all those years, for not standing up for you, for accepting everything while you got nothing, for being part of the problem. Rebecca, I appreciate that, Marcus. I do. But you were a kid too, trying to navigate the same dysfunctional family. They pitted us against each other from the start. It's taken me years to stop blaming you and start blaming the system they created. Marcus, do you think we'll ever have a relationship with them again? Rebecca, I don't know. Maybe. But it would have to be completely different. They'd have to acknowledge the harm they caused, take responsibility, make real changes. And honestly, I don't think they're capable of that level of self-reflection. Marcus, yeah, me neither. 5 years after starting Sterling Solutions, we launched a new initiative, a program that offered free marketing services to domestic violence shelters and organizations supporting survivors. I'd learned that many of these organizations struggled to spread awareness because they had no budget for professional marketing. We called it the Eleanor Project, after my grandmother. Working with survivors reminded me how many different ways people could be made invisible. By abusive partners who told them they were worthless, by systems that didn't protect them, by societies that looked away. And just like those homeless youth I'd worked with years ago, these survivors needed to be seen and heard. One survivor, a woman named Lisa, told me her story, how her husband had controlled every aspect of her life for 12 years, how she'd escaped with her 2 children and nothing else, how she was rebuilding from scratch at 43 years old. Lisa, people ask me why I stayed so long. They don't understand that he'd convinced me I was nothing without him, that I was lucky he put up with me. It took me years to realize I wasn't the problem. He was. Rebecca, how did you finally realize that? Lisa, a counselor at the shelter asked me what I'd tell my daughter if she was in my situation, and I realized I'd never accept for her what I was accepting for myself. That's when I knew I deserved better. Her story resonated deeply. I'd spent years accepting treatment from my family that I'd never tolerate for anyone else I loved. It was a profound form of self-betrayal, and breaking that pattern had required rewriting my entire understanding of what I deserved. Nathan and I had a daughter 3 years after we got married. We named her Eleanor after my grandmother. Holding her for the first time, I made a silent promise. She would always know she was loved, always know she was valuable, always know she was seen. I would never make her compete for affection or question her worth. She would grow up knowing, beyond any doubt, that she mattered. Nathan, she has your eyes. Rebecca, I hope she has your heart. You're the kindest person I know. Nathan, she'll have both of our hearts, Becca. And she'll never doubt for a second that she's loved. Watching Nathan with our daughter, seeing the gentle way he cradled her and talked to her, I felt grateful for the journey that had led me here. If my parents had loved me the way they should have, I might never have learned to love myself this way. I might never have built the life I had, helped the people I'd helped, become the person I'd become. That's the strange thing about pain. Sometimes it breaks you, but sometimes, if you're lucky and stubborn and willing to do the work, it remakes you into something stronger. On the 3rd anniversary of my grandmother's death, I visited her grave for the first time. It was a simple stone in a quiet cemetery, elegant without being ostentatious. I brought flowers and sat on the grass beside her. Nathan stayed back with Eleanor in the car, giving me space for this moment. Rebecca, thank you, Grandma Eleanor. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for believing I was worth something. Thank you for giving me not just money, but permission to live on my own terms. The wind rustled through the trees, and I felt, for just a moment, like she was there with me. Proud, satisfied, at peace. I thought about the girl I'd been 3 years ago, standing in my parents' driveway, watching my brother receive millions while I got a hug. That girl had felt worthless, invisible, forgotten. But she'd had a strength she didn't know about yet, a resilience that was waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't money or houses or cars. Sometimes it's someone believing in you enough to show you that you're capable of standing on your own. My grandmother gave me that gift, wrapped in an inheritance and a letter. But the real treasure was the confidence to become who I was meant to be all along. I left the cemetery as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer asking if I wanted to grab dinner. Another message from Marcus, sharing a joke. An email notification about a new client meeting. I had work to do, people to see, a life to live. Not the life my parents wanted for me, not the shadow of someone else's success, but my own beautiful, complicated, meaningful existence. And it all started with a hug. The moment I realized that if that was all they had to give me, then I'd have to give myself everything else: approval, validation, love, success, happiness. I'd have to be my own champion, my own supporter, my own believer. Turns out I was enough to do exactly that. I drove home through the city streets, windows down, music playing, feeling the weight of the past finally lifting. 3 years ago, a stranger showed up in the form of an attorney with news about a grandmother I barely knew. But that stranger brought me the greatest gift I could have received: not just wealth, but the key to my own worth. My parents gave my brother $200 million, a Tesla, and a mansion. They gave me a hug. But my grandmother gave me something infinitely more valuable. She gave me myself, and that made all the difference.